Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Muhtaram Janab Abul Kalam Sahab, Vice Chancellor of the NED University, and ladies and gentlemen and students of NED University, it is certainly a great pleasure for me to be here amongst all of you, and especially to be involved in a discussion which is so important for all of us, not only as scientists or engineers, but as common people, as common man. And I would like to appreciate the efforts of Koshish Foundation and the spirit which they have portrayed in today's workshop, in today's seminar, and the philosophy which they are preaching, that they have gained something from this country and then somehow they have gone out of this country and want to contribute for the betterment of this country, and therefore they have thought of this sort of an arrangement where funding, awareness, etc., can be brought about by such activity. And it is not only NED, but many institutions of Pakistan have contributed in this way, and many of our experts and expertise are abroad. And all of them can be stimulated to act in a similar way and come up with similar foundations and similar NGOs which can contribute to the betterment of Pakistan. Then of course NED University has also continued to be the major university for producing engineers, not only in Karachi but all over Pakistan. And in spite of the advent of the private sector in the education sector, NED still continues to be the leading institution. And I would like to appreciate the role of Dr. Engineer Abul Kalam, who has been so consistent for the last more than 5-6 years, I believe so, even more than that, I think so, as the Vice Chancellor, and at this age he has contributed to the betterment of this institution and has made it more elevated. I think he is an asset for Pakistan. Then, as Kalam Saab said, that enough has been said about the technicalities of climate change, the impacts of climate change and what we need to do, and therefore I would also not like to go into that, but I would like to appreciate the presenters and the presentations which they made. Mr. Abnawaz spoke about biodiversity, which is certainly so important because the whole food chain, the whole ecosystem depends on the biodiversity. Then of course Dr. Imran Ahmed was also gave a comprehensive presentation on why global warming, and is it really global warming which is creating this problem or not. And then of course finally Ehsan Siddique was also very brief but very pertinent to the impacts which the climate change has brought about universally as well as in Pakistan. But then one thing was very clear, that Pakistan itself is not really contributing to the climate change, because climate change is basically due to the damage of the ozone layer, which is basically due to the greenhouse gases, and as has been said before, it is more the industrial nations, the more developed nations which are contributing to it. But the impacts, like the vulnerability of Pakistan, has shown to be very high, and we have seen that vulnerability. We are experiencing rains and floods which we had not experienced at such a great frequency or intensity before this. And therefore the impacts are already there, and therefore we need, and all we can do as far as climate change is concerned is to adapt ourselves, because the impacts are mostly, what we need to do is to improve the standard of living. Like the rural development is an ignored sector, and most of the effects of floods and rains are in the rural areas. And there the urban development, the rural development is so poor, that there is no proper infrastructure for drainage, for sewerage, etc., and therefore we need to emphasize upon the rural development of Pakistan, in the rural areas of Pakistan. And there of course the effects on agriculture have to be analyzed, and efforts should be made to nullify those effects by research in the agriculture field and in the irrigation system, etc. But what is the problem with Pakistan is that although we are not contributing to climate change, but the other environmental issues are so fierce and so wild that we need to do something about them. Like if we talk about Karachi, there are 4 important sectors which are contributing to the degradation of environment, and directly or indirectly, the effects of climate change are coupled with the effects of this poor environmental management which we are experiencing in Pakistan, especially in Karachi. There are 6 industrial areas in Karachi, and most of them are active. Most of them are full of industries which are functioning. And the industrial effluent, be it liquid, solid, or emissions or particulate matter, the compliance level is extremely poor. And they are all contributing to environmental degradation, which is going into the sea also and disturbing the marine ecology. Similarly, the transport sector, the reliance again is on very old buses and minibuses, and the vehicular emissions emanating from this transport sector which we have is also contributing to the air pollution in our city and other major cities of Sindh also, and Pakistan in general. And then the third important area is the municipal delivery. We see that the local body setup, whether it is the old city district government setup, or it's the Karachi Water and Sewerage Board, or whether it's the present setup which we have again come back to, just the commissionerate system, we see that the compliance level is very low. The management of sewerage, even in Karachi, is so poor that we are generating about 600 million MGD of sewerage, out of which only 50 or 60 MGD of sewerage is being treated at the moment. Similarly, the solid waste management system, आप सब देख रहे हैं कि इतना पुअर है कि हर जगह हर मोहल्ले के अंदर जिस तरह से कचरा जमा होता है और फिर हफ्ते के बाद एक डंपर आता है, उसको उठा के लेके जाता है, और फिर जब उसका डिस्पोजल है वो again it is so problematic. It is being dumped in improvised landfill sites like Mali river bed, like Liari river bed, and then it is burnt over there, and then the air quality of course and other environmental issues arise from such poor solid waste management. And finally, the development side is, of course, we have to go for sustainable development. We have to look after the future generations. But the development in our country, be it housing, be it industry, be it infrastructure development, is totally non-cognizant of the environmental issues. There are very few projects which are presented to the Environmental Protection Agency for the approval of the impacts which the project can be. So we need to improve upon that, and the subject environment as a consequence of the 18th Amendment now has become a provincial issue. Initially it was a federal, we had a federal legislation in place. Now we are trying to have the provincial legislation in place, and while doing so we are trying to take everybody on board, the academia, the stakeholders, the general population, so that whatever law which we come up with, whatever regulations we come up with should have the input from everybody. And in this effort, we already are in a process of entering into an MOU with NED since a year or so. I would like to complete that job as soon as possible, and then also involve the learned people from NED in the efforts for the legislation also. In the end, I would like to once again congratulate NED and Koshish for having this discussion on a very important subject. And after many years, I have seen that the speakers have been serious and the audience has been very serious also. So I believe in a way we have contributed towards this important issue today after spending this couple of hours over here. We need to repeat this exercise elsewhere also through other agencies. Thank you so much.